I am dreadfully sorry that I'm not there tonight. I don't know that you can appreciate the extent of my frustration that I'm not able to be there. I'm not sure if Christine told you, but I am in DC doing some work for the College Board, helping to redesign the SAT to include some really rich science content passages. And I was supposed to get home at 4 o'clock, and the flight got canceled. And so I won't get home until about 9 o'clock. So I'll miss your entire final seminar. But look in your email because I want to have a little party for you guys. So hopefully we can make that work. Tonight, Christine and I wanted to make sure that you ended with a form of a gift. And this form of a gift hopefully comes in two ways. One, we're doing something called a consultancy. A consultancy is really the idea that we want to consult or ask for help. And hopefully that's one of the things that you feel you've been successfully able to do this year is ask for help when you need it. And so the idea of a consultancy is that you can reach out to people. Maybe they're not in your department. Maybe they're around your school. Maybe they're beyond the borders of your school. But you're reaching out to people to get feedback on what we call a problem of practice. When you think about your teaching practice and how well you're doing, what are the problems that really stand out to you? And the problems that you're going to hear presented today are not problems with a simple fix. And so what you're looking for when you do a consultancy is you're really looking for a group of people who can help you really brainstorm what is the true problem and what are a variety of answers that I can try to see which one is the right fit for me. As we talk about problems like a reward system and EC modifications, there is no one answer, especially maybe not even for any one teacher. Different points in the year you might need to do different things. So the reason that the consultancy from the National School Reform is so important is it provides a very distinct frame. If you've ever sat in a PLC or department or school meeting where all of a sudden you digress into complaining about X, Y, or Z and you never end up coming up with good solutions, deep, thoughtful solutions to a problem, that's why the frame of the consultancy is so important. So I just real quickly want to give you a reminder, an overview of the big idea of the frame. You'll hear and get to read someone's presentation of the problem. That's the first part. This is where the person has tried to capture the essence or big ideas of their problem. And so the first part is where they are re-going over that, re-clarifying. And at the end of that first time period, you are supposed to have the person or the presenter reframe their question because their question might have changed. Now this idea of time is also really important. So you'll want to make sure that you have pulled up the link to the consultancy protocol and that you've identified a facilitator to help you make sure that you're staying on time. Now if you trim a few minutes here and there, you can always add them on to a later section, but we actually really discourage that because we want to make sure that you are deeply diving into each segment of the frame and not shortchanging any part. Because if you shortchange the intro, then you might not have all the information you need later. So the first part, remember, was the presenter presenting their problem and reframing their question. The second part is where you ask what are called clarifying questions. And I love that language. I use it a lot in my day-to-day, even if I'm not doing a consultancy. These are questions that are things like, who does this? When does it happen? How often? How long have you been trying this? These are supposed to be questions that have pretty straightforward answers. You're just trying to collect more and more information about the current status. And so the place where some people have trouble in clarifying is sometimes the questions get a little too deep, too fast. Sometimes we get into intent and what is your reasoning for this? Those are more probing questions. Your clarifying questions are just trying to get as much data as you possibly can. So you have a certain amount of time for clarifying questions. It's a shorter period of time. And then you have a section on what are called probing questions. This is where you're trying to dig really deeply into why does this person feel that this is a problem? And what are some of the other things that might be contributing to this problem? So for example, if someone were to talk about, well, I always do this at the end of the day. Well, a clarifying question might be, is your scheduled class end time always the same from day to day? And that might reveal a deeper problem of maybe you get dismissed to lunch early, or maybe someone comes and takes your class for the last 5 minutes one day a week. And so that might lead to a probing question of, have you ever asked your department chair about such and such? That's a much deeper probing question of, has that person tried this or tried that? So some of the questions that you might ask might start with the stem, tell us more. Tell us more about such and such and such. But specifically about the why. So if you did the pre-work, one of the questions asked which questions are why questions. These probing questions are really the why questions. So without this why, you might just be asking for straightforward details, but asking the why really digs deep into why this person feels this problem is important. Asking what hasn't worked is sometimes a really good way to probe deeper into what they have tried and what they haven't tried. And then finally asking them what a perfect scenario looks like really probes into what they think the ideal situation would be. Now, these are just 3 sample questions. Probing questions really depend on what the person is asking you and what you've already heard. I do want to pose this as a question. Have you ever considered ... So you heard me a second ago say, well, has that person ever talked to their department chair about such and such? This is actually a problem, and I caught myself in the middle of it, because this is a solution. Have you ever considered asking your department chair to cover your class while you ... That's a solution, and we're not trying to get there. So instead, we don't want to ask solution-based questions. We want to ask a question such as, have you talked to your department chair about this? Have you sought out so-and-so? What would it look like? Again, be really careful with what would it looks like, because that can very quickly become a solution in the guise of a question. So we want to hold solutions off, because right now we're trying to get the presenter to think and process in a slightly different way than they did before. So, presenter presents the problem. We ask clarifying questions. We ask probing questions. And then, this is the part that hopefully gets really deep. This is where the presenter no longer talks, physically removes themselves from the situation. And the remaining members, keeping track of time, try to talk through 2 things. What are the problems that we hear? First, really making sure that we identify all of the problems that we hear. And this can be really sensitive for the presenter sometimes, because sometimes this gets at some very personal aspects of the presenter's practice. And so it is normal sometimes for presenters to feel very uncomfortable. We're not wanting them to feel attacked. So we're not evaluating or judging them. We're just trying to identify all the things that we hear. First part of this is, remember, really identifying the problems that we hear, and then coming back to talk about some of the solutions. Now, depending on your group, you might go problem, solution, but be careful, because we don't just want to give the presenter a whole list of solutions. And really quickly, that time can just go into throwing a million solutions without really thinking about what was that presenter's main problem. And so remember, during this time, the presenter does not talk, cannot answer any questions. So if you still have questions, you could say, I wish that I had asked the presenter such and such. The next part is where the presenter debriefs. So usually during this time that they're talking about the problem, the presenter is writing down facts. Now you might, as a participant, have written down a lot of facts on your paper. And that's brilliant, because you can then hand that paper to the presenter so they have evidence of your notes, just in case you didn't say anything or in case they didn't remember it all. So after the other participants have talked over the problem and possible solutions, now the presenter is the only one who speaks. This is their time to really process what they heard, think about what was really meaningful to them, things that they hadn't thought about. At the end of that, you do need to save a little bit of time for debriefing the process. It's really tempting then for the presenter and the participants to go back and forth about what they liked and more ideas. Hold off on that. Try to write those down on the paper. Instead, be sure to save some time to really talk about how did the process go. Because this leads to the second gift that Christine and I hope that you see in this, is that it is something that you can take back to your school and do a consultancy with groups of people either in your department or within your school. And if you don't debrief the process, you never have time to talk about, oh, I noticed that we were asking a lot of probing questions during the clarifying. Or, oh, I noticed that I tended to say a lot of solutions during the probing section. It's a time to be very reflective for yourself and to give a little bit of careful pushback and feedback to your other members of the group. So that's a consultancy. And we have a few people in here who have participated in one that I did, and led their own. And so today we're really excited for you to kind of be able to circle around and hear a couple different problems and think about how they apply to your work as well. We hear a lot from people that when they participate in the consultancy, not always when they're the presenter, but just participate in it makes them think about their own practice. Try to hold off on that till a little bit later because you are trying to give that person the gift, but hopefully that reflection part makes you think about your own teaching practice as well. So that's a consultancy, one of my favorite things to do with other super intelligent, motivated, and thoughtful teachers. So I really wish that I was there with you today. And instead, I'll be sitting in the airport. Right now, I'm sitting in my hotel room. But thinking about you guys, wishing that I was there.